Welcome to All Things Marketing Podcast, the podcast that talks all things marketing for both franchise and multi-location marketing leaders. ATM is brought to you by PureDriven. We'll show you how to turn your brand into a money-making machine. Here's your host, Steve Rockwood.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to ATM. My name is Steve Rockwood, and I am the marketing manager at PureDriven. Today, we are going to talk about why marketing matters. I am joined by special guest Chris Swanson, the CEO at PureDriven, as well as the head of franchise development. But we're actually going to upgrade him to co-host today and from now on, because when we first started this podcast, we didn't think Chris was going to be available for all these. So we were like, let's just have him as a guest. But you know what? Chris made time for us, so he is going to be a co-host. So, Mr. Co-host, would you like to say hello to the audience?
Well, hello, everybody. And Steve, that's an awesome surprise. Steve just springs this stuff on me. No, it's been fun. I've been spending a lot of time on your show.
You have.
Really enjoy it. And, you know, we talked about maybe there's an opportunity for me to do this and be more committed to that time. And so, so I'm excited to be kind of co-hosting and talking through all things marketing with you. And I appreciate everything so far. So now I guess I have to stay committed to the schedule. And
you do, or at least let's shoot for 3 a week with the co-host. That sounds fair.
There you go.
5 per week with the host, 3 with the co-host is a good amount, I think.
And now, guys, what you're witnessing is me slipping my contract over to Steve, which includes a very handsome salary on it. So now he's backpedaling a little bit, but that's okay.
Well, I will talk to his assistant about that. Well, Chris, today we're going to talk about why marketing matters. So my first question for you is, why is marketing important for a multi-location business?
Doesn't matter if you are a franchise or if you're a brand, corporate owned. It's so critical that you understand what you're trying to do with your marketing. Everybody markets, whether they know it or not, in some different way, shapes, or form. But being very intentional about marketing is so critical. All things considered across your brand, how you're communicating things, where you're putting those messages, the images, the videos you're creating. You know, everything matters to help build that business. And so it's kind of a simple question, but it's really, there's a lot to this if you unpack it. And that is that what I usually find is that people say marketing matters. At the end of the day, it's one of the first things that they cut. When it comes to budget, they often don't really have a strong plan, and they're not scoring or they don't have KPIs in place, key performance indicators, to tell them, has this been successful? And those are all problems. But please understand that marketing for your brand is critical.
I definitely agree as the marketing manager at a marketing company. My next question, I get this one a lot actually, which surprises me sometimes, and that is, what is a marketing mix?
Yeah, and this is a pretty simple way to explain it, but I love Chex Mix, and I make it all the time actually, like even not during the Christmas season or Thanksgiving time, because I love it so much. And I think I'm actually good at making it, but I'm probably not. But everybody tells me it's good, so that feels
it's
great.
good no matter what. I don't think I've ever had bad Chex Mix.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Anyways, like the way I describe it is, you know, if you've made Chex Mix, you understand you have the different Chex. You know, you can have wheat Chex or rice Chex. You then have pretzels often. You can put peanuts in it. My grandma used to put like Cheerios in it, which is different.
Interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah. Goldfish is wonderful. You can put Gardettos, the chips.
I have had those. Yeah.
Garlic chips. I mean, there's so many different ways you can make it. But just imagine if each one of those ingredients really is something different. So you might have more traditional type advertising, like say you're really still big into radio, or maybe television still matters for your brand. And then you have things like digital marketing, which is kind of interesting. You might have like a Pandora or Spotify, which is more audio, digital driven, but kind of a traditional feel in that it's kind of radio, but it's online, type thing, streamed. And so you have all these different things. Then you can talk about paid search and so on. And so when you say what is the marketing mix, it's really the mix of all the different digital, traditional marketing things that you can really tie down and say, yes, this is actually part of what I'm trying to do day in and day out. And all I can tell you is that they all do relate. We work with brands today that they would never get rid of radio, and it would not make sense for them to get rid of radio. That's a very traditional play. It can be expensive. You don't always know if it's working from a result standpoint, but overall they know it works based on their revenue and what's happening within their stores. So that might be something that's important. For other people, they've gone completely away from anything what we consider traditional. Some of those folks are even considering, I've had people talk to me about considering losing a website domain altogether. We've entered that era where it's kind of like, well, why do I need the domain again? But you're still, the recommendation out there is still strongly that domain drives a lot of credibility on the internet, not just from a human credibility standpoint, but from a search engine and many other things going on. So I would never recommend that today, but maybe, I mean, things change, right?
Oh, yeah.
Someday the website fast. might be the CD of old, you know? In fact, I think that we could see that in our lifetime.
Well, to be fair, we used to install the internet with a CD, so.
There you go. Yeah. AOL, baby.
Yep, I still have the discs somewhere. Well, that being said, I think we will talk about maybe some real examples of the marketing mix in a future episode. Maybe we'll take a few of the brands that we've worked with or look at and use a couple of their stores as examples of a marketing mix just to show people what that actually looks like in the real world. Because just like the Chex Mix thing, having more ingredients doesn't necessarily make it more successful. You find the ones that work the best. So I think that a lot of people, when they think of marketing mix, probably think of a lot of different things coming together, but it could be just 5 to 7 to 8 things that work really well for that brand. So we'll try and have an episode about that one of these days here. I have one more question before I let you go, Chris, and
Sounds
that is,
good.
How does spending money on marketing now affect your business in the future? And you did touch on how people cut marketing first, so maybe you can elaborate a little bit on why they shouldn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, so we live in a world now where when we're working with digital marketing, we often find that you can sometimes get lift right away. Now there's more revenue, more business, but it doesn't always work that way. And sometimes, as we've found, it really takes a little bit of work and pushing in and doing some different things to get that particular market to move a little bit, to get some traction, to start lifting. It's almost like the internet has its own little, it kind of lives on its own. Like I think it's all the bots and everything that Google's running. They start to see changes to the domain. They start to see activity, and I think it starts to come alive a little bit, and they recognize, oh no, this is a real entity that's really focused on delivering traffic. So I think that helps you. But one of the biggest things that I point out to people pretty consistently is just take a step back, and think about a time when you saw an ad and then within 2 minutes you made a purchase, or within 5 minutes you made a purchase, or even within a few days you made a purchase. So often we'll see an ad and we initially don't think a lot about it. It might even cross our brain, but we don't really engage it. And then the one that always gets me is like when I'm looking for a new car. Like I ignore all the car ads, or truck ads. And then all of a sudden one day you're like, oh, I definitely need to get a new one. It's that time. What happens? Well, those ads start becoming relevant, and your brain starts going, whoop, and it starts paying attention to that. So our job as marketers is to try to get ads in front of people that actually these things are relevant to at that time. But it doesn't hurt you to be putting things out there and getting people engaged, even if it's just passing through. And at that time when they're ready to go, you're putting that messaging in front of them. So timing's everything, as they say.
Oh, yeah.
And we find quite often that just by staying the course, doing the same things over and over again, if it's not working, let's not do insanity. But if it is working, let's figure out ways to adjust, tweak a little bit, and add on to make sure that campaign really starts to soar.
Yeah. So take what's working and boost it, basically. Make
Absolutely.
it better.
Yeah. And that's how, sometimes it takes a little while to find those channels where things really start to work. But if you stay the course, you're patient, the reward is there. And so that's the only thing I would just really caution people. I get questioned all the time about, well, what about all the ad blocks and everything? No, people don't even have, and I just want you to know that, there's stats out there. And one of the ones I saw recently that made a lot of sense to me is 77% of consumers agree that they would prefer to ad filter than completely ad block. And so, we got that from HubSpot, but this means that people still want to see ads that are relevant, that they're interested in. So you got to be thinking about that, as a lot of people recognize it. The other thing, just from a practical standpoint, is so many people are changing their devices. So you might have an ad block on one day, and the next day you're changing the settings. And frankly, a lot of people just don't go through the hassle of doing that. And so unless you're really adamant about, I absolutely do not want to see these ads, which there's a percentage of people, and that's fine. If that's how they feel about it, great. They should be able to block. Meanwhile, Google and everybody else are working on ways that they can make sure that in an ethical way, we can still deliver ads to the people that want to see it. And so that's why we want the ads to be relevant to what the person's interested in.
Yeah, definitely. I was actually at my dad's house yesterday, and he said, it's so cool. Every time I go online, there's an ad that's perfectly meant for me. He thinks it's the coolest thing in the world that all the ads he gets are things that he would actually want to buy.
Well, that's because he was on their website earlier, and now the ad is.
Yep.
That's great.
It's hilarious. I was actually looking for refrigerators, and he goes, I'm getting ads for refrigerators now, and I don't have a 30-inch fridge need, but I'm getting them now, so I'll let you know if I see a good one. Well, Chris, thank you for joining me, and thank you for accepting the position of co-host here on ATM. That is awesome.
No worries, Steve. I got that contract there ready for you to sign.
Sounds good. I will use a pencil so I can erase it after when you're not looking.
Or the disappearing ink, right?
Exactly. Well, thank you, everybody. We are out of time for the day. Thank you listening. Wow, thank you listening. Thank you for listening to the podcast. We will catch you next time right here on ATM.
You just listened to All Things Marketing Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast to catch every new episode every day. Want to be a guest on the show? Sign up at puredriven.com/guest. See you tomorrow here at the ATM.